Welcome back to another episode of War in Cali. In this episode, I'm going to talk about a Sacramento rapper named X-Rated. If you're a little older, you may remember the rapper X-Rated from the early 90s. He was on the rise with other Sacramento rappers from his area like Brother Lynch and Sebo. But if you don't remember him, I'm going to give you a little background. X-Rated was born Honoré Brown on July 30th, 1974. X-Rated grew up being intrigued by the gang life with it all being around him. By the age of 13, he was put on by his set, but football was always X-Rated's top priority. With the loss of his grandma, it crushed X-Rated and his family, so it pushed him more into the streets. His gang was the 24th Street Garden Block Crips. The Garden Block Crips consist of three cliques: 29th Street, which is the biggest clique, 24th Street, which X-Rated claimed, and also 21st Street. While X-Rated was on his way to be a full-blown gang member, his family sent him to Texas with other family members to keep him out of trouble, which worked. He got back on track with football and even got a scholarship to a private school to play football. But he'll eventually lose his scholarship with his mom not being able to pay a few payments. X-Rated ended up moving back to Sac where he couldn't go to the school in this area, which is Burbank. Burbank didn't allow him to go because of his gang ties, so he had to go to a continuation school, but that wouldn't last long. X-Rated would drop out of school and become a full-time Crip. Around 15 years old, X-Rated would start rapping when a friend had some studio equipment. They would start to work together on music, and then X-Rated would drop a few tapes. They started spreading out throughout Sac and got some buzz throughout California. The name X-Rated came from an early song where he mentioned being X-Rated, and the name stuck. X-Rated had an early association with Brother Lynch, with him being from the same set, 24th Street, so it was easy for them to connect with rapping, even with Brother Lynch being a few years older. Early 90s, X-Rated would build an association with Black Market Records, and this would lead to him signing a deal, which will also lead to him starting to make his most known album, Psychoactive. By 1992, in the midst of his career, X-Rated was life forever changed. Sacramento politics now compared to the 80s and 90s is a lot different from the gangs, the beefs, and also the cliques. South Sacramento's politics were a lot different back in the day. If you watched all my episodes involving Sac, you would see the current state of how some Sac beefs are. If you haven't checked it out, go ahead. The Garden Block Crips currently are not rivals with a lot of gangs they used to beef with in South Sacramento. Another well-known South Sac gang is the Meadowview Bloods. The Meadowview Bloods and the Garden Block Crips used to be fierce rivals back in the day, and both lost members to their wars. But currently they don't beef. Both gangs are more focused on their top rival, and that would be the Oak Park Bloods. Even though both gangs are on cool terms now, they wasn't in the 90s at all. On March 14th, 1992, X-Rated homies would get into an altercation with some dudes and went to X-Rated house. The group came together and talked about another situation and about finding who took the life of one of their homies from their hood. X-Rated believed a Meadowview blood named Jamal did it, or his brother Kerry. So X-Rated and his group of homies mounted up and went to the Meadowview brothers' home, where they vowed to take the life of the Bloods. X-Rated and other Crips kicked down the door and started blasting. Unfortunately, nobody was shot but a woman named Patricia. She was Kerry and Jamal's mother. Patricia got caught walking in the hallway to see what all the noise was about after the door got kicked down. As she walked through the hallway, she walked into a barrage of shots. Patricia was a beloved member of the community and was also a community activist who helped everyone in the area, and this hit the community in an outrage. The police wanted everyone involved. This would later lead up to all X-Rated homies being picked up, and one started snitching, telling police everything that happened. X-Rated wasn't in town when everybody got picked up. He was doing promo and doing shows for his new album. X-Rated was later arrested in Arizona and got took back to Sac. X-Rated would go to juvenile hall because he was 17 at the time, but the case would be later tried as an adult, and he faced several charges on this case. In his case, X-Rated was one of the first rappers ever arrested to have his lyrics used against him in court from his album Psychoactive. He would get a lot of negative media for it, because they would say he was talking about the crime that was committed in his songs, which wasn't true. He already recorded the songs before the crime ever happened, but they still used them against him in court. While sitting in jail fighting his case, he would record music over the jail phone, and that would later become the album Exorcist in '95. Shortly after the album was released from county jail, X-Rated was sentenced to 31 years in prison, and the supposed actual shooter got a long sentence as well. 21, X-Rated was hit in prison for the first time. In reception, X-Rated would be celled with Sebo, and they would work on a lot of music together. He even wrote some of Sebo's songs. A lot of the songs X-Rated made would lead to another album behind bars, and it was called Unforgiven, which dropped in '99. In jail, X-Rated would still be talked about by him trying to keep his name out there by calling radio stations, doing interviews, appearing in magazines, and he also would drop music non-stop, dropping over 15 projects behind bars from 99 to 2010. But around 2010, X-Rated was stabbed in prison. By this time, X-Rated had been in prison for over 18 years. While in prison, he was approached by a northerner. X-Rated really didn't pay attention to the guy off him approaching him because he was Mexican. In prison rules, he didn't trust their interaction because he didn't know his intentions and was asking too much. Over time, the dude was trying to get X-Rated to hook him up with the music business. X-Rated looked into the dude and found out that he was a snitch, and he gave his paperwork to his car. But to be honest, I don't know why X-Rated thought that would matter. They was on special needs yard, aka PC. So X-Rated telling dude's homie he was a rat meant nothing, cause X-Rated was surrounded by rats and dropouts, cause he was in PC with him. The dude found out what X-Rated did, he wanted revenge. So him and his homie surrounded X-Rated on the yard and stabbed him 7 times. But the stabbing wasn't nothing too major. X-Rated would still continue to drop music behind bars, dropping over 5 albums, and still continue to do interviews behind bars. During this time, it was a new law passed to help people who committed crimes as kids to get less time on their sentences. X-Rated would use this to get a parole hearing, but the first time, he was denied. It wouldn't be until 2018 when X-Rated made parole. He spent 26 years in prison. Upon being released from prison, X-Rated would start a label and jump right back into the music, dropping a song and video called California Dreaming. X-Rated would do several interviews about his life, his experiences in the street, and jail, and how he changed as a person. X-Rated continued his work ethic, dropping over 4 projects since being released. With the crime he was convicted for, he still gets some old hate for what happened, but to a lot of people, he still gets love, and people consider him a legend from the early 90s, with him being one of the first people to shine light on Sacramento. X-Rated is still currently dropping music and still focused on his career. Even with missing 26 years in prison, he seemed to recover and still trying to bounce back. This was X-Rated's story. This will conclude this episode. If you haven't already, make sure you check out my previous videos. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe.